hand carefully digs into the soil, unearthing a flourishing green herb. A blonde woman in a straw hat proudly holds up her harvest, happy her hard work paid off. She admires her basket full of fresh, sparkling vegetables, pleased with the good results. The garden thrives, a testament to the rich and fertile soil she cultivates. Deciding she has enough for the day, she happily skips away from her garden patch. She smiles, content in her hidden strawberry field, a secret no one else knows. But her expression turns somber as a memory begins to surface. She recalls a time when she wasn't so enthusiastic about tending to this lonely field. The flashback begins at the Grand Espencia estate, where her mother, the owner, passed away. Lying in state, her mother's assets were supposed to be inherited by her daughter according to the law. As a little girl, she cried in mourning, clutching her stuffed rabbit. The law was clear. She was to inherit everything. But the Duchess of Basellan, her father's new wife, unjustly seized her mother's property. The Duke quickly remarried and replaced all the loyal servants with his own people. A man announces that a shocked young Elrose is being sent to a monastery for recuperation. Her green eyes widen in disbelief and terror. In the pouring rain, she realized she was abandoned. A carriage travels a treacherous cliffside path, the only route to the isolated Vieira monastery. The monastery is completely cut off, surrounded by the Vieira forest and a sheer cliff. Rain pours down on the foreboding monastery at night. Escape from the forest is impossible without passing through the monastery's walls. A menacing monk greets a terrified young Eloise, telling her a private space is needed. They announce they have prepared a special place just for her. She was led not to a room but to a decrepit, isolated shack in the woods. The monastery sent her inedible food daily, nearly starving her into submission. Back in the present, Elrose reflects that, though she was close to death, she refused to give in. She reveals she survived by pretending to be sick, which lessened their constant surveillance. She hoped she could continue living this quiet, simple life in peace. But her moment of peace is shattered as she senses something approaching her cottage. Her eyes fly open in sudden alarm. She sees two figures in robes and realizes with dread the people from the monastery. Panicked, she knows she must get back to her shack immediately. She scrambles frantically inside her home. She quickly grabs a drab, hooded cloak. Determined, she wraps the cloak around herself, urging herself to hurry. Outside, the two monks call out, "Lady Elrose." They stand at her door, announcing they've brought her meal. Ugh. As the door creaks open, the monks recoil in disgust at the sight of her. Eloise, hunched and feigning sickness, weakly thanks them for the food. Disgusted, the monks tell her to say no more and hastily prepare to leave. As they turn away, one of the monks gives her a final, suspicious glance. They quickly announce their departure, eager to get away. The moment they're gone, she throws her head back, gasping in relief. She dramatically casts off the heavy cloak, her deception successful. Later, she sits thoughtfully in her garden, finding it strange that two people delivered her meal today. She wonders why her father would suddenly send someone now. Looking toward the distant monastery at night, she decides she needs to find out what's going on. Disguised in a nun's habit, she cautiously enters a messy storeroom in the monastery. She observes the room is filthier than ever, with mice scurrying over the food. Deciding to make the trip worthwhile, she prepares to take some butter and sugar. She muses that while the forest provides essentials, she can't find baking ingredients like sugar or butter. Suddenly, she realizes with a jolt that someone is approaching the storeroom. Forcing herself to stay calm, she hides as the two young monks from earlier enter the room. The monks look around silently, and Elrose wonders if they're just here to clean. Overhearing them, she learns a special guest and a massive donation have the abbot excited. She realizes the commotion is just about money, thinking they wouldn't care about anything else. But then one monk mentions the girl abandoned in that hut, and her blood runs cold. The other monk is surprised, asking if he means Lady Eloise. He dismissively describes her as just a woman left in a rural monastery to die. He then drops a shocking rumor. It seems her father was killed. The words hit her like a physical blow as she reels in disbelief. My father is dead? The monks realize this means she's now the countess, but quickly change the subject back to the guest. He reveals the important guest was sent by none other than the late count's wife. Eloise immediately pictures her cruel stepmother, the Duchess of Basellan. The name echoes in her mind with venom, Camilla. The monks discuss the law, noting the inheritance must be settled within a week, or things get complicated. They piece it together. The plan is to keep Elrose trapped here for a week to miss the deadline. The brown-haired monk gives a knowing smirk. He reasons that since they bribed the abbot so heavily, they must be serious about keeping her here without any trouble. A new, hooded figure with a scarred neck declares his purpose, to take care of troublesome things. Gasping in terror, Elrose stumbles back through the woods. The horrifying realization dawns on her. They've come to kill her. Crash. She's thrown back as the window to her secluded shack shatters. Shivering and alone, a tear traces a path down her cheek as she whispers that it's cold. She recalls the slow, painful acceptance of her fate, that she was truly abandoned and alone. Inside her small home, she sits in quiet contemplation, the meager bread, a symbol of her desolate life. She remembers being so hungry she couldn't even read, deciding to search for food before anything else. Wandering the forest, she discovered a patch of wild strawberries, a small taste of hope. It was then that she found the perfect clearing, a place suitable for farming. With a triumphant smile, she hoists a shovel, ready to begin her work. Driven by a hatred of the inedible black bread, she resolves to turn this land into a thriving field. Back in the present, she refuses to die now, realizing she has until tomorrow before the assassin comes. Dressed in a traveling cloak and ready to flee, she prepares for her escape. She clutches her mother's necklace, the one precious thing she must take with her. She gazes at a vision of her home, filled with the hope that one day she can return. A memory surfaces of her younger self, joyfully running to her mother with open arms. In the flashback, her mother embraces her, asking if she will protect the beautiful garden when she inherits it. When a doubtful young Elrose asks if she can, her mother assures her, "Of course, you're my daughter." The memory focuses on her mother wearing the very same green necklace. Her mother places the heirloom around her neck, telling her to always cherish it. Clutching the necklace in the present, she whispers her mother's name, her resolve hardening. She knows that while she has a day's head start, she'll be caught if the abbey pursues her. She recalls the assassin's orders. No one is to approach the cabin until he returns. A smirk spreads across her face as she realizes her chance. I can run away. Without a moment's hesitation, she bolts into the dark, snowy woods. She pauses, filled with uncertainty about her future and whether she'll ever live peacefully. Shaking off her doubts, she pushes onward through the dense forest. She reaches the treacherous cliff, knowing no one would expect her to escape this way, but she recalls the hunter's diary. Just as the diary promised, she finds it, a rope and anchor, a secret path down the cliff. She recalls her first terrifying descent, crying from fear as she held onto the rope. To survive, she braved the descent on weekdays to visit the nearby village for supplies. Over time, she became a savvy bargainer, using her earnings to buy essentials like seeds and clothes. With fiery determination, she clenches her fist, refusing to let them break her spirit. Shaking off her pain, she steels her resolve, knowing the real battle for her life has just begun. Unaware of her escape, the hooded assassin with the scarred neck stalks through the woods toward her shack. He approaches the cabin, sneering that if she's already asleep, his job will be easy. But as he enters, a rope trap yanks him off his feet, dropping him directly onto a vicious bear trap. Arig. A blood-curdling scream echoes from the cabin, silenced by the forest. Whoa, now free, Elrose rides triumphantly across a sunny field, happy to finally be back. She arrives at the bustling capital, the magnificent city where her mother once lived. Observing the crowded streets, she overhears villagers discussing how the recent war has caused an influx of people. A flashback reveals that 5 years ago, a beastman race invaded the empire from the north. Unprepared for the invasion, the empire lost most of its northern territories, flooding the capital with refugees. The empire swiftly rallied its armies, with noble families from across the land joining the fight. Among the war's greatest heroes was the legendary mercenary king, Harkhan. A close-up reveals the famed mercenary king in profile, his eyes covered by a simple blindfold. Known as the Mercenary King for over 30 years, he was granted peerage by the emperor a year ago for his service. Back in the present, Elrose realizes the war's lingering effects mean many refugees still can't return home. She worries about her next move, knowing her mother's mansion is now filled with her stepmother Camilla's loyalists. She reviews the empire's strict inheritance laws. Only a legal adult, typically through marriage, can claim their title. If the heir fails to claim it, the entire inheritance defaults to the surviving spouse, in this case, Camilla. A desperate idea strikes her as she stands before a large building, the Mercenary Guild. Clutching her entire savings of 50 gold coins, she hopes the guild can fulfill her unusual request. Inside, she overhears two mercenaries marveling at a massive reward being offered simply to find someone. Her blood runs cold as she realizes with horror that the person they're being paid to find is her. As the mercenaries decide to take the lucrative job, she quickly ducks behind a barrel to hide. Dong! The sudden toll of the clock tower startles her, a stark reminder of her deadline. The clock is about to strike 6, and she realizes with mounting panic that she is out of time. Desperate, she closes her eyes and prays for a miracle, asking God to send her a husband immediately. Thud. In a shocking answer to her prayer, a man suddenly crashes down from above, landing right in front of her. Stunned, she wonders in disbelief if he literally just fell from the heavens. An angry man yells from a window above, furious that the bastard he was accosting just escaped. Hiding, Eloise overhears thugs harassing the fallen man, mocking him for his new title of Baron earned during the war. The thugs corner him, cracking their knuckles as they prepare to extort money from the new noble. Suspecting they are thugs from a gambling den, she decides to slip away before getting involved. Kaya! Chaos erupts, and in the confusion, a thug spots her trying to flee and demands to know who she is. Just as she tries to excuse herself, the fallen man grabs her arm, stopping her from leaving. "Honey, don't go," he says, with a charming smile, leaving a shocked Eloise utterly speechless. Kneeling dramatically, the man grabs onto her cloak, putting on a show for the thugs. She insists he's mistaken, but he plays along, asking if she remembers sending him off to make his fortune. Clutching her hands, he tearfully claims he did it all for her, while she frantically denies knowing him. "I don't know anyone like you," she protests, completely bewildered by his bizarre claims. One of the thugs observes them, confused by the strange scene and noting she's just a young woman. The lead thug remains suspicious, but Elrose panics, realizing they're not leaving. The thug steps forward, demanding to know if she's really his wife as she desperately tries to deny it. He sneers that if she were, she'd be lucky to have another source of income, much to Elrose's silent frustration. The two thugs stare at her with greedy, leering expressions. They demand 50 gold coins from her on the spot to cover the man's supposed debt, plus interest. "I have no business being in bed with this man," she screams internally, furious at being dragged into his mess. The man cheerfully tells his honey to hurry and give the thugs her 50 gold coins. She struggles against his grip, thinking he must be crazy, but he just holds on with a triumphant huff. He holds her face, surprised that she doesn't flinch, and wonders about her inner strength. He drops the act for a moment, whispering to ask if she actually has 50 gold coins. With a charming smile, he asks if she can lend it to him, leaving her utterly stunned. Flustered by his smile, she stammers her agreement, wondering what is wrong with this man. Kaya. The lead thug interrupts their whispering, grabbing her by the hood. The thug squints suspiciously, trying to figure out what's going on. Eloise looks up at him, completely bewildered by the sudden aggression. The man quickly steps in front of her, taking her money pouch as she gasps in surprise. Having placed himself between Elrose and the thug, he now stands protectively before her. Distracted, Eloise notes how handsome he is and decides to just hand over the money. The man gives a slight, confident smirk as he holds her pouch of gold. A shocked Eloise pops up behind him, comically yelling about when he managed to get her money. He promptly tosses the pouch to the thug as Eloise screams, "No!" The lead thug gleefully counts the money, confirming it's exactly 50 gold coins. He then makes a sly offer to the man, suggesting he could work at their establishment. With his good looks, the thug says, he could make a fortune for them. The man smiles and declines the offer, still holding Elrose's hand. He kisses her hand, declaring that he is the type of man who only obeys one person. Looking deeply at a flustered Elrose, he asks, "Right, honey?" leaving her baffled by his words. Suddenly, her eyes widen as she hears a faint sound, wondering if it's a flute. The man cheerfully tells the thugs they have their money and should be on their way. Without another word, he grabs her hand and yells, "Let's go, honey," as they make their escape. They flee down a side street, disappearing between the timber-framed buildings. Now safe in an alley, Elrose leans against a wall to catch her breath while he asks if she's okay. He watches her with a gentle, somewhat amused expression. He explains that he was simply playing along with the situation as it unfolded. Dong he promises to return her 50 gold coins, explaining his place is in the Western District as a clock tower chimes nearby. Dong. The sound of the bell strikes again, and Elrose realizes with a jolt that she's out of time. He asks if she's listening, but she slumps against the wall in despair. She whirls around and confronts him, demanding to know if he is truly a noble. He gives a sheepish smile, confirming he is indeed a noble, or at least an heir apparent. Furious, Elrose grabs him by the collar, demanding the 50 gold coins he owes her. Glaring at him, she asks if he intends to repay his debt with his body. The scene shifts to a grand, ornate mansion glowing under a sunset sky. Inside, Camilla, the cruel stepmother, sighs dramatically as she lounges on a chaise. A maid warns her about wrinkling her dress, but Camilla retorts she won't wear it again after the funeral. She dismissively orders the maid to bring her alcohol and prepare for an incoming guest. The story flashes back to a few days prior. The Merchant Association president offers his feigned condolences to Countess Camilla. He remarks that her vast mansion is the perfect location for a massive arcade they plan to build. He proposes to buy the entire estate from her as soon as the funeral is over. He promises a handsome price, and Camilla gives a cunning smile from behind her fan. She muses that selling the failing family business is the perfect deal for her. Camilla recalls how smart it was to send Elrose to a monastery, remembering the girl's pleas to inherit her mother's mansion. A flashback shows a young, crying Elrose being dragged away, begging them to let her go. Her desperate cries of, "I don't want to," fade as she's taken away. Back in the recent past, Camilla notes that Elrose was supposed to declare her inheritance intentions today. Since Elrose hasn't appeared, Camilla smirks, smugly assuming she has finally given up. Camilla smirks, confident that the Basellan family will never guess her true plan to sell everything and live in luxury. Lounging in her opulent room, she impatiently wonders why her guest is taking so long to arrive. Hearing the clatter of a carriage, Camilla assumes the merchants have finally arrived. As a carriage pulls up to the manor, Camilla and her maids walk out to greet their visitors. Camilla puts on a dazzling, yet insincere smile as she prepares to welcome her guests. A voice from the carriage announces, "I've been waiting," as the door begins to open. The man takes Elrose's hand, helping her step out of the carriage as they arrive together. In a flashback, the man asks a cloaked Elrose who she is. A butler rushes out, informing the pair that they are no longer accepting customers for the day. Elrose dramatically removes her hood, stunning a maid as she declares she's here to take back what is hers. The maid recognizes Elrose's unique hair and eye color as Camilla looks on with cold displeasure. A brief memory shows a younger Elrose being embraced by her mother, highlighting their striking resemblance. Elrose is glad to be remembered as the man stands beside her, while a shocked observer asks if that is really Elrose. Camilla quickly regains her composure, a cunning glint in her eyes. Camilla mocks Elrose, claiming her time at an abbey has made her ignorant of the law requiring marriage to inherit. "You aren't married, so you don't have any right." Camilla taunts, but Elrose simply contemplates the word marriage. Elrose presents a certificate of marriage bearing her name, Elrose Basellan, and her new husband's, Rakshan Ashid. "This is my husband, Rakshan," Elrose announces as he gives a small, awkward wave. Camilla fumes, realizing Elrose knew the law but is disgusted. She married a northern barbarian. Camilla questions Elrose's story, finding it impossible she met and married a suspicious man while in an abbey. Elrose calmly replies that it is none of Camilla's business. Convinced there's something wrong with him, Camilla demands to know why Rakshan is hiding his face. "If you're confident, show your face," Camilla shouts, challenging him directly. Rakshan calmly agrees, as Elrose nervously anticipates the reveal. As he removes his hood, Camilla and her attendants are struck speechless by his appearance. With his handsome face revealed, he asks Camilla if she's relieved now, while Elrose internally agrees he is very good-looking. Elrose stares, flustered by his unexpected appearance. Rakshan leans close, telling Elrose he can't wait to be alone with her, putting on a show for Camilla. Completely flustered, Elrose thinks to herself that he wasn't this forward at the government office. In a flashback, Elrose introduces herself at an office and asks for his name, to which he simply replies, Rakshan. At the office, Elrose asks if he is okay with their arrangement, and he confirms she said it was an emergency. He expresses his doubt, stating that getting married for money is not a good idea. He then smirks, wryly reminding her that he's hardly one to talk, given her offer for him to repay his debt with his body. His expression becomes serious, recalling her promise to divorce him once the trouble is over. He urges her forward, telling her to, "Come on, do it," and sign the papers. Holding the document with the name Rakshan Acid, she reflects that she was supposed to be careful when choosing a husband. She wryly muses that she never thought she'd just find one on the street as she decisively stamps the marriage certificate. Back at the office, he asks if she's heading to the mansion, but she says she must meet someone first. In the present, Elrose holds the official document, telling Camilla it's government approved, regardless of her opinion. Eloise stands firm, her resolve unshaken. Camilla's thoughts are interrupted by the sound of more approaching horses, wondering who else is arriving. The two thugs from the alley arrive with their scarred leader, and Camilla asks a confused Elrose if she knows them. Rakshan explains they are intimidating mercenaries as the scene pans over the city rooftops. The Merchant Association president arrives, cheerfully greeting Countess Camilla and saying he's been waiting. Camilla leans in, admitting to the president that there is a bit of a problem. She whispers that an uninvited person has appeared, gesturing toward Elrose and her new husband. The president turns to Elrose, demanding to know who she is. The president's young associate explains they are here to meet with Countess Camilla. Elrose proudly introduces herself as Elrose Basellan, declaring that she is now the Count of Basellan. Both Camilla and the president are visibly frustrated, realizing their deal is ruined now that a new count has appeared. The Merchant Association president's associate questions why the new count is here, recalling she was supposed to arrive after the contract was signed. Eloise clenches her fist, looking extremely tense and anxious. As thugs with drawn swords advance, Rakshan pulls Elrose protectively behind him. Rakshan leans in close, asking Eloise if she wants him to get rid of the thugs for her. Surprised, Eloise asks how, questioning if he can really take down all of them by himself. He gives her a confident smirk, boasting that there's nothing he can't do. Eloise thanks him for the kind words, privately admitting she was almost tempted to let him try. Composing herself, she turns away and states that this is her own problem to handle. Furious, Camilla orders her men to seize the bastards immediately. The thugs grab Rakshan, and Elrose frantically tells them to wait. She demands they let him go, insisting he has nothing to do with this situation. With a knife to his throat, Rakshan feigns hurt, asking, "Honey, how could you say I have nothing to do with this?" He smiles blissfully amidst a background of flowers, proclaiming, "I'm your husband." Oof. The thugs holding him look repulsed as Eloise realizes he's sad that she's pushing him away. As the thugs look like they're about to hurl, Elrose wonders what is wrong with this man, while Camilla furiously tells them to stop joking. Camilla taunts Elrose, sneering that a long-lost child can't just return and be acknowledged, adding that her defiant gaze hasn't changed since she was a kid. Eloise glares back, cutting to the chase and demanding to know what kind of contract Camilla has with the merchants. Camilla dismissively explains she hired mercenaries for protection out of grief, but Elrose's determined expression shows she doesn't believe a word. Camilla mocks Elrose's late father for clinging to the mansion out of pride, snapping her fan shut with a sharp sound. She coldly tells Eloise she's too late and that perhaps she'll meet her dead parents soon. Unfazed, Eloise asks if Camilla really thinks she arrived without considering the odds against her, leaving her stepmother stunned. Eloise bows her head slightly, acknowledging that she is well aware she has no one standing by her side. Just then, a new carriage arrives, and a distinguished man steps out, identified as Marquis Lexian, the imperial family's Minister of Finance. Camilla and the president are shocked, wondering why the powerful Minister Lexian is here. Minister Lexian looks on, surprised by the large, tense crowd gathered at the entrance. He wonders why a certain person is here, and seems annoyed by the unexpected crowd, contemplating if he'll have to wait. Eloise smiles warmly at the minister, dismissing the others as uninvited guests and thanking him for coming. Minister Lexian replies that he should be the one thanking her. He loudly announces he's here to process her donation of all her territories and wealth to the country, leaving Camilla and the merchants completely thunderstruck. "What do you mean?" Camilla screeches, frantically reminding everyone of the vast territories and wealth the prior count still possessed. As the vast wealth is detailed, the president panics, realizing she's donating everything, while Elrose watches with a triumphant smirk. Eloise decides to give it all to the one person Camilla can't defy, the Emperor. The minister thanks Elrose for the historic donation, and she expresses her gratitude for his help with her sudden request. Eloise entrusts everything to the minister, asking him to honor a specific term she requested, which he graciously accepts. With her plan revealed, donating everything with the condition the mansion is preserved, Elrose walks away with Rakshan, having kept her promise. You can change your voice in the settings menu. Later that evening, Eloise finds Rakshan waiting for her and apologizes for the delay. He tells her it's all right and asks if it's okay for her to be out like this after her busy day. Eloise smiles happily, replying that no matter how busy she is, she'll always have time for her savior. She presents him with a heavy pouch of money and jewels from Camilla's room as payment for his help. She tells him to sell the jewels and keep the 50 gold, insisting none of her success would have happened without him. She adds that this is a small payment and that there's something else she needs to say. Standing in the quiet garden, Elrose sincerely thanks him. A confused Rakshan asks what she's thanking him for. She recalls his earlier offer to fight the thugs for her. Eloise admits that his bold offer made her smile, relieving her fear of Camilla, and she thanks him again, deeply touched. Rakshan watches her, a thoughtful expression on his face as he takes in her heartfelt gratitude. Eloise explains that by donating the mansion to the Empire, she has protected it forever, feeling it was the best possible outcome. She laughs, admitting she was certainly tempted by the immense wealth. However, she concludes that owning it all would have put her in danger, and this way, she took care of what was important to her. Eloise smiles, announcing her plan to leave the capital for now. She happily wishes Rakshan and his companion a safe trip back. Leaning in, she whispers a reminder to Rakshan to meet her on Monday to finalize their divorce. Rakshan stands alone before the towering gates, watching quietly as she departs into the night. The man who was with Rakshan returns to a humble dwelling, where a hooded figure asks if he has come back. The hooded subordinate bows deeply to his companion, thanking Your Highness for his help and confirming they have successfully gathered all the evidence. Phew! His hood now down, Rakshan expresses his relief, stating he has completed the tasks his brother assigned, which his subordinate acknowledges. Rakshan dismisses the subordinate for the night, telling him not to worry about guarding the area, as he will report to his brother tomorrow. The subordinate looks flustered and quickly scurries away. Later, Rakshan collapses onto his bed, reflecting on the long day and the fact he even had to get married. He recalls being chased, with shouts to block him and thinking he needed to avoid being suspected until the very end. He remembers their truly weird meeting, when he stumbled and fell right before her. He flashes back to the moment he saw her, remembering her shiny blonde hair. Back in the present, he smiles to himself, admitting he thought her hair would be incredibly soft to touch. He sits up with a jolt, blushing, as he wonders if he's going crazy. Getting out of bed, he decides to head to his hometown, noting that His Majesty always tries to keep him in the capital. He muses that His Majesty would be upset about the marriage, but since it's fake, it's fine. Otherwise, Elrose would be there for their wedding night. He breaks out in a sweat, flustered by his own thoughts. Bolting upright, he again questions what he's thinking and resolves to just wash up and go to sleep. Meanwhile, on a balcony, Elrose reflects on the absurdity of getting married only to divorce immediately, feeling she is alone once more. Smirk. She corrects herself, realizing she has been alone ever since she was abandoned in the cabin. A memory surfaces of her mother placing a necklace on her, advising her to pray with it during hard times. Clutching the necklace, she tells her mother's memory she isn't having a hard time but still wonders what to do next. Suddenly, the green gem in her necklace begins to glow with a brilliant light, startling her. Elsewhere, a young boy waits in a lavish room, noting that someone is taking a long time. He decides to go for a walk in the garden. He quickly changes his mind, thinking it's better not to stand out. The boy looks up at a grand, ornate portrait of a crowned, blonde-haired empress. Looking at the portrait, he wonders if she really looks like him, remembering his father joking he gave birth on his own. In a flashback, the boy asks his father what his mother looked like, and the father acknowledges his son has never seen her. The father smiles fondly while sketching, saying she's always shining, and the boy recalls how happy his father looked explaining it. He remembers finding his father grieving over a bouquet of white flowers, looking at the window. The father reveals a portrait, telling a young Rakshan his mother is the former emperor Eucrasia, and explaining their secluded life after she dealt with traitors. In another memory, a man gives Lakshan's father the pendant, explaining that Eucrasia said to use it for help and that he should keep it. A horrific memory shows a young Rakshan screaming, "Father!" as his father is fatally stabbed, gasping out his last words. His father's words anoint him as the next mercenary king, Harkhan, as Rakshan holds a white wig, ready to take his place. He remembers taking command, disguised as Harkhan, and leading an evacuation as the people cheered his name. He reflects that the death of Harkhan, his father, was a secret known only to him and a few colleagues. In the present, a door bursts open, and a smiling blonde man in a royal uniform calls out, "Rakshan." Rakshan turns and bows respectfully, greeting him as Your Majesty. The Emperor tells Rakshan he doesn't have to be so formal with his greetings. Rakshan smiles slightly, replying that he still can't just wave at the Emperor. A flashback details the final showdown between the Imperial Army and the Suan people, where the Emperor fought on the front lines, initially having the upper hand. However, the tide turned as the Emperor's army was isolated and outflanked by the enemy. A soldier reports with alarm that the Emperor is completely surrounded by the Suan people. Realizing his brother could die, Rakshan, disguised as Harkhan, charges into the fray against all warnings. Harkhan fights desperately, straining to break through the enemy forces. He viciously cuts a path through the enemy to reach the surrounded and fallen Emperor. A soldier shouts for His Majesty as Harkhan looks down at the injured Emperor, who seems to recognize him through the disguise. Cradled in his arms, the wounded Emperor looks up and confirms his rescuer's true identity. "So you're Rakshan." Rakshan tells the Emperor he's amazed he noticed his torn bandage right away. The Emperor smiles warmly, asking Rakshan what he is thinking about. Rakshan recalls their first meeting on the battlefield, impressed that the Emperor knew who he was instantly. He marvels that his brother recognized him even before seeing the necklace. The Emperor explains that the late Empress, their mother, had often told him about Rakshan. A memory of a young emperor with his mother surfaces as he reflects that Rakshan looked just like their father when he was born. The Emperor playfully boasts that he would have recognized him anyway, crediting the royal family's keen instincts. He reminds Rakshan that he, in turn, found him immediately amidst the chaos of battle. The Emperor teases Rakshan for still calling him Your Majesty, but never brother. Rakshan feels he can't, as it would betray the few who know the truth. But the Emperor tells him not to be so guarded. The Emperor thanks Rakshan for his help with the gambling house problem, but pivots to a new topic. Choke, he brings up Rakshan's marriage problem, causing him to spit out his tea. Rakshan sweats nervously, a strained smile on his face. He quickly tries to brush it off, telling the Emperor not to worry about his marriage. The Emperor looks genuinely concerned, asking why he shouldn't be. He launches into a lecture, pointing out Rakshan is 26 years old, well past the average marrying age, as Rakshan sighs in resignation. The Emperor dramatically announces he's setting up meetings with every eligible woman in the empire and tells Rakshan to prepare himself. Rakshan stares in horror, completely blindsided by the massive book of potential brides. The Emperor cheerfully informs him the meetings start tomorrow and that he must stay at the palace, calling him brother to seal the deal. Stunned by the word, the Emperor freezes, asking in disbelief if Rakshan really just called him brother. Panicking, Rakshan blurts out that he already has someone he considers his partner. The Emperor erupts, shouting that of course he'd only mention it now, knowing he'd be forced to introduce her immediately. Rakshan calmly explains how overwhelming a sudden meeting with the Emperor would be for her. He smoothly lies, hoping the Emperor will respect his need for caution, privately impressed with his own excuse. The Emperor presses on, insisting he at least needs a name to call this mysterious partner. The two brothers engage in a silent, tense standoff. The Emperor asks what kind of person Elrose is, and a flustered Rakshan describes her as energetic and wonderful. Deciding it's too much for her to come to him, the Emperor declares he will go out to meet her himself. Rakshan panics, realizing his only option is to flee. Meanwhile, Elrose arrives at the mansion courtyard, feeling strange now that it belongs to the Empire, and noting she's finished the legal work. She wishes she had an escort for her meeting, but knows she can't be seen getting a divorce. Inside, she pours herself a drink, still feeling out of place. She walks past the mansion staff, who look on with concern. She reflects that she could never even relax with a glass of water here, as she prepares a drink. Elrose considers postponing the divorce, but decides against it, knowing Rakshan would want to get it over with quickly. Ouch! Suddenly, a gloved hand yanks her hair from behind. She gasps in pain, reeling from the shock of the attack. Her consciousness begins to fade as she struggles to understand what's happening. A hand steadies her as a voice feigns concern, telling her to lean on them. Recognizing the voice with horror, she sees Camilla, who mockingly tells her to get a grip. Camilla sneers that they have much to discuss, and a paralyzed Elrose fears she will die just like the man she sent. Her thoughts fly to Rakshan, realizing his name will be ruined if she dies right after their marriage. Camilla's thugs complain about Elrose's weakness as they prepare to carry her away. As Elrose lies unconscious, Camilla muses that she'll stay awake even if her limbs are cut off, and grimly decides to begin. A firm voice commands them to let go of her, and Camilla looks up in surprise. Rakshan stands in the doorway, his expression cold with fury. "What are you doing to my wife?" he demands, stunning Camilla and her goons. Camilla recovers with a smirk, taunting him for walking right into her trap and mocking his attempt to act like a mercenary. She orders her men to deal with him first, and they menacingly close in. With a flick of her wrist, Camilla gives the order, "Catch him, HMPH." Rakshan moves with blinding speed, effortlessly punching out one of Camilla's goons. As the thug collapses, Camilla and her remaining men stare in shock at the dark, powerful energy radiating from Rakshan. Rakshan smirks confidently, clenching his fist and admitting that overwhelming force is his best skill. Elrose jolts awake in a panic, gasping Camilla's name as the trauma of the attack floods her mind. Confused, she sits up in a large, unfamiliar bed and wonders where she is. Rakshan enters with a gentle smile, asking if she is finally awake, while carrying a tray of food. Elrose stares at him in complete surprise, asking why he is there. He sets the food down on her bed as she repeats her question, asking what this place is. Rakshan kindly tells her to eat first, explaining the doctor warned the strong antidote for the poison would make her dizzy on an empty stomach. The camera focuses on the steaming, hearty stew he prepared for her. Elrose admits she feels dizzy, then urgently asks what became of Camilla and her mercenaries. In a flashback, a terrified Camilla begs for mercy before an imposing figure, her defeated mercenaries lying on the ground. The memory of the confrontation is a blur of violent screams and chaos. Rakshan recalls carrying the unconscious Elrose, ordering someone to clean up the mess and find the nearest hospital. He begins to spin a tale, claiming he saw her being dragged into an alley. In a cute, simplified flashback, he shows himself frantically reporting the kidnapping to the security guards. He continues the story, explaining the guards arrived and arrested Camilla and her men for abduction while he rescued Elrose. Elrose looks skeptical, questioning if such dangerous people were really taken into custody so easily. Rakshan embellishes his lie with a grin, claiming the mercenaries fought among themselves and that Camilla was poisoned and fainted during the chaos. Relieved, Elrose accepts his fabricated story about what happened. Sitting quietly in bed, she offers him a sincere thank you. Surrounded by a floral aura, Rakshan smiles warmly and says it's simply his duty to his wife. He gently reminds her to eat her food before it gets cold. Elrose hesitates for a moment before picking up her spoon. She takes a bite and lights up, exclaiming that it's delicious and thanking Rakshan again. After she's eaten, Rakshan gets serious and asks what she plans to do from now on, catching her off guard. Outside, a crowd of opportunistic relatives storms the gates, demanding an audience with Elrose to reclaim her donated assets under a new law. Elrose sighs, acknowledging that she needs to get far away from the capital now. She laughs brightly, reassuring him that she has more than enough money to do so. She explains that some people in the Ministry of Finance helped her hide assets before the mansion was seized. Clutching her necklace, she reveals she has something else besides that. A brilliant light from her necklace transports her to a magical dreamscape, where she marvels at her new gown. Back on the balcony, she wonders about the strange light from her necklace. The light guides her to a painting on the wall, where she discovers a hidden keyhole. Pressing the hidden mechanism, she opens a secret compartment behind the painting, revealing a sealed scroll. She unrolls the scroll, staring in shock at the password for a safe and the locations of 5 hidden emergency funds. She remembers her mother giving her the necklace, apologizing that the emergency fund she left was small. Elrose tearfully shouts in disbelief, wondering how 100,000 gold could ever be considered small. She imagines a life of luxury, realizing the money is enough to buy a grand house and live comfortably forever. Decided, she tells Rakshan she wants to go far away and asks for a suggestion. He impulsively invites her to his hometown. Elrose looks up, surprised by his unexpected offer. Rakshan instantly questions his own words, trying to backtrack from his spontaneous invitation. He nervously promotes his hometown as a quiet place, secretly hoping she will refuse his awkward offer. To his utter shock, Elrose beams with unrestrained joy, Rakshan is left completely speechless by her enthusiastic reaction. Eloise's face is a picture of pure, unadulterated happiness at the prospect. She eagerly accepts, explaining that a small northern village is the perfect place to hide from her greedy relatives. Rakshan fondly describes his hometown's fertile land, golden wheat fields, and peaceful river. Watching him, Eloise notes to herself how much he clearly loves his hometown. She reflects that it's the perfect destination, as its status as a newly acquired, uncivilized territory means no aristocrats will bother her there. Eloise asks Rakshan why he is being so kind to her, leaving him momentarily speechless. She points out their marriage is one of convenience, so his kindness and offer to take her to his hometown are unexpected. She suspiciously asks if he offers his hometown to all the women he meets, and he shouts, "No," in protest. Flustered, Rakshan stammers as he begins to ask Elrose a serious question. Surrounded by a romantic floral aura, he nervously asks her to be his partner. A flashback explains that in the North, partner is what people call their spouse. The explanation continues over an image of their hands clasped together, symbolizing their bond. As Eloise romantically muses on the different stages of partnership, Rakshan panics and shouts for her to stop. He frantically clarifies he only wants her to pretend to be his partner, leaving Elrose confused. With her arms crossed, Elrose begins to process his frantic explanation. She correctly summarizes his entire predicament. He doesn't want to get married, was forced by his brother, and lied about having a partner. He admits he used her name and description in his lie, and a defeated Elrose quietly apologizes. He explains he couldn't back out because his persistent brother would have investigated her, revealing the lie. Eloise understands, concluding that they must maintain the pretense of being married for a while. He asks if she's sure, but she says it's the least she can do. He adds that it will also help fool her relatives. Eloise smiles sweetly, accepting their new arrangement. Now traveling in a carriage, Elrose calls out to a cloaked Rakshan. She asks if he's really all right, but he seems confused by her concern. Thinking he's worried about the cost, she offers to pay for the wagon, but he asks if that's what she's worried about. He reassures her he was just calculating their travel schedule, and she falls silent. He muses that she likely still has a poor impression of him as a mercenary from their first meeting. He reflects on his vast territory, a land he received after growing tired of war, but which carries a heavy tax burden. She cheerfully dismisses his worries, reminding him that he saved her life and already received property from the Emperor. He tells her there's no need to explain, and she reflects that it's been a long time since anyone has worried about her. As their carriage departs from the grand mansion, she bids it farewell. Overcome with motion sickness, Elrose stumbles from the carriage, and Rakshan quickly offers her water. She explains she was always too tense in the capital to ever relax and enjoy a carriage ride before. Radiant and at peace, she gives Rakshan a heartfelt thank you. He offers her the water skin again, and she quietly accepts. An enthusiastic innkeeper with a prominent mustache welcomes them to his establishment. When the innkeeper asks if they can be provided with just one room, Rakshan cheekily interrupts to request they share the same one. The innkeeper assumes they're a couple, and Eloise stares in shock at Rakshan's audacity. Rakshan loudly proclaims they're newlyweds who can't be separated, and leads his tired wife away, much to the amusement of onlookers. Calling her honey, he sweeps her into his arms, leaving her speechless as a man with a spider tattoo watches from the lobby. He carries her into a lavishly decorated room. Alone in the room, the playful act drops, and both look thoroughly annoyed. "They say all men are wolves," she yells, brandishing a candlestick as a frantic Rakshan insists he can explain. He explains that he saw someone in the lobby with a spider tattoo on his upper arm. A curious Eloise asks about the tattoo's meaning. He explains that the spider tattoo is the mark of robbery experts. He argues that if they had taken separate rooms, she would have been targeted by the robbers during the night. He worries his story was too scary, internally noting that such robbers often kill or steal from mercenaries. Still, he hopes his ruse worked as intended. He reflects on his past, wishing mercenaries weren't so hated, noting the difference between the respected mercenary king and the mercenary Rakshan. He recalls the painful insults hurled at him, a money-grubbing troublemaker, a barbaric punk, and admits they hurt because they weren't entirely lies. Elrose's curiosity brings him back to the present, as she asks about other mercenary tattoos besides the spider. She excitedly describes seeing dragon and lion tattoos on her way there, asking if they have special meanings too. She admits to being a little scared of mercenaries, but she reminds him that he is also a mercenary, and the Empire owes its victory to him and his soldiers. She smiles brightly and asks why he would ever think she would be scared of mercenaries, leaving him stunned. Elrose eagerly asks about other mercenary tattoos, and Rakshan begins to explain the famous ones. Later that night, Rakshan quietly calls out to a sleeping Elrose. Lying awake, he notes her lack of caution as she curls up beside him, sleep-talking, and asking where she should sleep. He glances at the uncomfortable-looking sofa, remembering his excuse for not sleeping there. Now in bed, he tries to keep his distance, but is flustered by the thought of their bridal night, quickly dismissing it. Startled, Rakshan sits up as Elrose cuddles close in her sleep, then stretches with a yawn, still completely unaware. He gazes down at her peaceful, sleeping face with a gentle expression. Flustered Rakshan clutches his chest, wondering if she's making a move on him, while she murmurs for her mom in her sleep. Holding her hand, he resolves that they must get separate rooms tomorrow, or he'll never get any rest. Eloise dreams of her mother, warning her that all men are wolves. In the dream, a younger Elrose asks if Rakshan is a wolf, and her mother advises her to be careful choosing a husband. Waking up alone in bed, Elrose bleakly remembers that she's already married. She sits up in a daze, wondering when she fell asleep. Noticing the rumpled sheets next to her, she realizes Rakshan slept in the bed with her. Sniff. She buries her face in the pillow, inhaling a faint scent of soap and Rakshan. She hugs the pillow with a contented smile, a slight blush on her cheeks. She calls for Rakshan, and he startles upon entering with breakfast, asking where he went. A flustered Rakshan explains he thought she'd sleep in longer. He presents a tray with a delicious-looking breakfast, and she lights up. Eloise excitedly inspects a coin, marveling at the drachma currency, while Rakshan privately notes her delight. Fork in hand, she looks at him with a hopeful smile and asks if she can live in his home. He proposes a cover story. She is the orphan daughter of his savior, and he's taking her in. She happily agrees. Rakshan sits with her at the table, offering to fix up a vacant house for her. She agrees, but inwardly reasons that since their marriage is just for show, he won't need to pretend in the village. Despite her logical thoughts, a wistful question pops into her head. Can't we live together? The scene shifts to a quaint, quiet village street. They enter a shop, a bell jingling to announce their arrival. A currency exchanger welcomes them, but sternly warns that he doesn't accept stolen goods. He inspects their coin, confirming it's real gold and offering a low exchange rate of 16 copper coins. Rakshan notes the poor rate, but decides to accept it, not wanting to drag an exhausted Elrose to another shop. Eloise looks over, confused by the interaction. She suddenly calls him honey, catching him off guard by asking about her mom's keepsake. She turns to the exchanger, dramatically refusing to sell her poor mother's hard-earned keepsake, stunning the man. Feigning sadness, she glances away, thinking that her story isn't entirely a lie. Moved, the exchanger relents, offering a better rate of 20 copper coins. Eloise gratefully accepts, adding that she'll use the money to buy a white daffodil to pray for her late mother. The exchanger is brought to tears, revealing his own late mother loved daffodils, and offers an even better rate plus 2 gold coins back. Outside on the street, the two stand in a moment of quiet accomplishment. Eloise proudly asks how she did. Amazed, she turned 8 gold coins into 200 copper ones. She grins, asking if he noticed the ridiculously low price the exchanger offered at first. She explains that she saw him hesitate when the man offered only 16 copper coins. Expecting him to negotiate, she decided to take matters into her own hands when he didn't. She reveals her secret, explaining she spotted a daffodil vase and a letter addressed to the man's late mother inside the shop. From this, she deduced he was a loving son, whose mother had passed away. In a chibi-style flashback, she explains her quick thinking to a stunned Rakshan, quoting her mother's advice to act instead of overthinking. Remembering her mother's lesson, she declares that successful bargaining requires putting your whole heart into it. Cheerful and newly funded, she asks where they're headed next, suggesting they shop for necessities. Eloise enjoys a shopping spree, picking out a new dress, hat, shoes, and bags. Holding her hat, she shyly asks if perhaps she bought too much. Rakshan holds up more clothes, reminding her that she claimed to have only one dress. He explains the northern region is cold, so they need warm clothes, and compliments her, saying the new dress looks good on her. She gives Rakshan a heartfelt thank you, admitting she couldn't have chosen these things on her own. A huge, overstuffed bag drops to the ground with a thud as Rakshan exclaims that she bought too much. Now cloaked, Rakshan offers to carry the enormous bag for Eloise. but she insists it's too heavy for him. He effortlessly slings the massive bag over his shoulder, assuring her he can handle it. Eloise thoughtfully reconsiders her initial impression of him as a weak mercenary, acknowledging his surprising strength. Arriving at a market stall, Eloise gasps in delight at the sight of so many different seedlings. She reminisces about her past attempts to grow vegetables in the capital, which were limited by her small hut and lack of a proper oven. Holding a small seedling with determination, she announces her plan to cultivate her own vegetable garden in his hometown. She imagines her peaceful future in a fertile village as Rakshan watches her with a warm smile. Eloise beams, full of hope and excitement for her new life. As they walk toward a hill, Rakshan identifies his hometown, Eldon. Elrose notes its beautiful name and eagerly asks for more stories about it. She excitedly imagines her idyllic new life, finding a clean house, cooking fresh meals, and dining with villagers. Her joyful celebration comes to an abrupt halt as she freezes, a look of confusion on her face. The idyllic image shatters, revealing the desolate, war-torn ruins of the village of Eldon. Rakshan comments that the town is in better shape than he expected, leaving Elrose to question his bizarre optimism. He clarifies that he expected nothing to be left, as the entire area was supposedly wiped out by the war. Eloise stares in shock, realizing Rakshan knew all along that his hometown was in ruins. He feels a pang of guilt, realizing he only told her the good parts of his childhood, as she looks on in disappointment. He internally berates himself for getting her hopes up, remembering he'd never told anyone about his hometown while living as Harkhan. He worries that she won't want to stay in such a desolate place after imagining a beautiful future for herself. Apologizing, he offers to find her a new place to stay, but she compassionately states that he must be the one who is most upset. She grips her bag, reasoning that her shattered fantasy is nothing compared to his destroyed hometown and his desperation. Rakshan smiles faintly and tells her that the Suan people were the ones who set the fire. He quickly changes the subject, telling her to rest at their house and offering to carry her bag as well. He reflects grimly on the war, admitting he didn't care about the damage to the north as long as other regions were safe. They stand before a surprisingly intact house, which he says can be fixed. Their moment is interrupted by someone shouting. A red-haired man named Kian appears and starts to call him Capt. Ugh. Before Rakshan swiftly smacks him. Rakshan grabs Kian, sternly warning him not to call him captain and to just use his name, Rakshan. Kian glances suspiciously at Elrose, but Rakshan quickly explains she's the daughter of an acquaintance with nowhere else to go. Kian flashes a knowing smile, making Rakshan uneasy. Kian playfully teases Rakshan about bringing a girl from the Empire, asking if she's his type, only to be kicked away as Elrose assumes they're just close friends. Rakshan firmly tells Kian to go to his colleagues and to remember he is just Rakshan now, not their captain. He watches her, thinking she'll probably leave in a year, or perhaps even sooner now that she's seen the village. From a distance, Kian wonders if she's truly leaving after a year. Kian smirks, convinced that things won't go according to Rakshan's plan. Elrose asks about the man, and Rakshan tells her his name is Kian, an old friend. Worried about what Kian might say to the others, Rakshan asks to go speak with him, and Elrose encourages him to go. Rakshan runs off, shouting for Kian to wait up. Kian arrives at a tavern where a group of men cheers, announcing that their captain has returned. Two men, Kugan and Raman, are identified, with Raman making a cynical remark. Two other men, Darius and Eden, welcome their captain back, expressing relief that he has returned from the capital. Rakshan arrives, exasperated, and repeats his order not to call him captain or use honorifics. His men immediately ask if he was followed by a spy, but he clarifies that he only brought a guest who is staying for a while. The men erupt in disbelief and excitement upon learning the guest is a woman. As his men start running, Rakshan yells at the punks to stop there. The group suddenly stops, confused as they see smoke rising from the direction of Rakshan's house. Coughing from the smoke, Elrose stumbles through a haze, wondering if the house is on fire. Thump! Rakshan kicks the door in, frantically calling Elrose's name and asking if she's all right. A startled Elrose peeks out from behind another door, asking Rakshan why he broke this one. Relieved, Rakshan explains he saw the smoke and panicked, while his men peer in curiously from behind him. He suddenly stops, noticing a fragrant aroma cutting through the smoke. Blushing happily, Elrose starts to explain what she's been up to. The scene flashes back to earlier, as Elrose enters a dusty cobweb-filled room, noting how dirty it is. Covering her mouth, she coughs, dismayed by the sheer amount of dust covering everything. Uncovering the furniture, she's surprised to find a very expensive-looking carpet underneath. A memory surfaces of her mother showing a younger Elrose, a beautiful fabric. Explaining its color comes from a rare southern dye. In the sweet memory, her mother whispers that they use secret dyes nobody else knows. Back in the present, Elrose feels it's a shame such an expensive item was left unattended and resolves to fix it later. Exploring a cellar, she puts her hands on her hips, amazed by what she finds. Her eyes widen as she has a sudden, hopeful realization. She gasps with delight upon discovering a sparkling oven and a heavy, expensive-looking pot. Finding more pricey cookware, she decides she'll need to wash it all up before she can use it. Outside, she beams, having found a well just as she'd hoped. Wah! She pulls up a bucket of perfectly clear water, amazed that it's clean and wondering who maintained it. Seeking a large bucket, she heads back inside and opens another door. She gasps, discovering a fully stocked food pantry. Though the quality isn't perfect, she's thrilled to have ingredients. Holding some vegetables, she realizes she can finally cook a dish she's been wanting to try since her time in the Abbey. Carrying a basket of produce, she feels a rush of freedom, excited to cook without fear of being caught for starting a fire. She begins cleaning a pot, but finds the old grime is difficult to scrub off. Recalling the cleaning methods she observed in the Abbey kitchen, she scrubs the pot with newfound vigor. She reflects on her past, remembering that she read books simply as a means to survive. As she cooks over a fire, she feels grateful that the kitchen skills she secretly learned are proving so useful now. Sizzle. She expertly adds strips of meat and sliced vegetables to the hot pan. The finished meat stew bubbles warmly in the pot, looking delicious. She reflects on her whirlwind life, running from the Abbey, marrying for an inheritance, and then running away again. A look of quiet, sad determination settles on her face. The scene returns to the present, as Rakshan's shout startles Elrose's mid-taste test. Rakshan and his men stare in shock, asking how she made a meat stew so quickly, with Razaman asking if she was the one cooking. Elrose smiles brightly, offering them the meal, and asking if his friends would like to eat first. Radiating a menacing aura, Rakshan warns his men that if any of them call him captain, he will kill them. A hearty bowl of stew is served, a silent thank you for the meal. She shyly asks Rakshan if the stew is any good, worried if it's to his taste. Blushing with surprise, Rakshan asks in awe if she only learned to cook at the Abbey. His men devour the stew, with one declaring it's the best thing he's ever eaten and that he wants it forever. Elrose beams, wishing she had known how much they'd like it so she could have made more. Kian playfully tells Rakshan it's worth filling the warehouse for her cooking, and Rakshan happily agrees. Kian politely turns to Elrose, asking if she would consider cooking for them while she's staying. Elrose is taken aback by the direct request. Rakshan tries to refuse for her, scolding his men for being greedy, but Elrose grabs his arm and eagerly exclaims that she wants to do it. Her face lights up with pure joy at the opportunity. The men cheer at her answer, and one exclaims how awesome she is, while Rakshan tells Kian to eat more calmly. Kian and the others thank Miss Elrose profusely, saying how wonderful it is to have a delicious meal again. One of the men sheepishly admits that until now, they've just been grilling ingredients because none of them can cook. As a cheapy thought bubble declares her their new cook, Rakshan glares, silently displeased. Later, Elrose watches Rakshan wash dishes, observing that he's good at it but is struggling with an oily bowl. With a sweet smile, Elrose holds out a fork with a piece of fruit on it, ready to speak to Rakshan. Startled while cleaning, Rakshan flinches as Elrose asks if he's mad at her. He turns in shock, exclaiming that it's impossible for him to be mad. She explains he's been quiet since his friends left and worries it's because she said she'd cook as she pleased. He smiles gently, assuring her he'd never be mad at someone who cooks delicious meals for them. He admits he feels sorry for bringing her to a rundown town after painting a perfect picture, making it seem like he's exploiting her kindness. He imagines his men already making greedy requests for pastries and clenches his fist in frustration. Overcome with shame, he kneels before her as his guest, but Elrose stops him, firmly stating she doesn't want to be a guest. She declares that even if she's only there a year, she doesn't want to live awkwardly as a stranger. Internally, she feels that being treated with such distance is like being pushed away. She recalls her lonely past, where isolation made her so desperate for contact that she began to stutter. She remembers talking to anything, a bird, a fruit, a rabbit, just to hear a voice, Despite her efforts, she was always alone when she returned to her room. In the present, she happily slices meat, thrilled to finally cook a large portion without rationing. She remembers the lively dinner with the men, wishing that warm feeling of sharing stories could last forever. She explains that she wants to cook many things, but can't eat them all herself, hoping they can enjoy them together. A flustered Rakshan suddenly blurts out, "I will eat it," surprising her. He possessively tells her to make a lot for him and not to give any to the other guys. As Elrose thanks him, a blushing Rakshan covers his face, mortified by his own outburst. Eloise gives him a bright, knowing wink. Rakshan clarifies that as her guardian, he just wants her to be comfortable, not to feel ordered around. He advises her to make sure she gets paid for her cooking, and she cheerfully agrees, saying she's very good at that. As Rakshan offers to finish the dishes and make her bed, Eloise decides to check the ingredients before heading up. Surrounded by flowers, Elrose radiates pure happiness. Her joy vanishes instantly as she stares in horror, exclaiming, "What's this?" She finds a huge pile of sprouted, rotting potatoes and despairs at the waste. Kayak! She falls back in disgust from an insect, declaring the pantry a total mess. She bursts out of the pantry, furious about the terrible state of the food storage. Fuming, she realizes that most of the food they bought is completely useless. Meanwhile, Rakshan proudly shows Elrose the bed he's prepared with a fresh sheet for the night. He prepares to leave, explaining to a confused Elrose that since there's only one bed, he'll sleep at Kian's place. He gives her a flute that can be heard from far away in case of an emergency, wishing her a good night. Eloise smiles and wishes him a good night as well. She thoughtfully clutches the flute he gave her. She sits on the bed, deciding not to blow the flute as a joke, and turns her attention to unpacking her luggage. Thinking about her busy day tomorrow, she decides it's time to take a bath. She's delighted to find a steaming hot bath waiting for her, prepared by Rakshan. Realizing he boiled the water after washing the dishes, she feels even more indebted to him. Blushing, she admits to herself she would have been fine if he stayed, then shakes it off to enjoy her bath. Elsewhere, a furious Kian bursts into his room, yelling for his bed back. Rakshan, already relaxing in the bed, coolly tells him to shut up and sleep, much to Kian's annoyance. The next morning, a well-rested Eloise wakes up and stretches in the sunlight. She snuggles deeper into the warm blankets, thinking it's colder here in the north. Popping out from under the covers, she searches through her bag, looking for her map. She studies the map, locating the nearest bank in Ruhan and calculating her remaining 20,000 gold. Her heart pounds with hope as she remembers that the bank is well protected and the war is unlikely to worsen. She feels reassured, knowing she can access her money in a year, which is enough to live on for a decade. Holding a letter, she resolves to give Rakshan a generous reward, determined not to be ungrateful to her savior. She starts tying her hair back, looking around the room for a mirror. Searching around the room, she's unable to find a mirror anywhere. With her hair tied back, she looks at her letter with renewed determination. Unpacking, she finds a drawing of a man and a woman, wondering who the woman is. She grips the drawing, feeling a pang of jealousy as she thinks Rakshan never mentioned dating anyone. Upon closer inspection, she realizes the man in the drawing doesn't have a mole and might not be Rakshan after all. A knock startles her as Rakshan calls out, and she quickly assures him she's awake. He enters and wishes her a good morning, then smiles, complimenting her new clothes. Eloise is flustered and confused by the unexpected compliment. Rakshan clarifies that he thinks her outfit looks good, and she realizes what he meant. A diagram explains her new outfit as a practical northern design that looks like a skirt, but is actually pants. She happily explains how comfortable the northern clothes are, and that she can even put things in her pockets. Changing the subject, she apologizes for looking at his drawing without permission and compliments his well-drawn expression. Rakshan takes the drawing, looking at it with a faint, nostalgic smile. He chuckles, telling a surprised Elrose that the man in the drawing isn't him. Eloise is stunned, realizing with relief that the woman isn't Rakshan's girlfriend after all. A chibi Rakshan remarks that it's been a long time since he's seen the picture. He explains that the man who resembles him is his father, and the woman is his mother. Rakshan continues his story with a gentle smile. He reveals that the woman in the portrait is his late mother. He recalls his father burning all his mother's portraits, guessing he couldn't bear to destroy this last one. Rakshan tells her that if she hadn't found it, the drawing would have been forgotten in the drawer forever. They share a lighthearted laugh, clearing up the misunderstanding. He apologizes for the sensitive topic, but Elrose thoughtfully tells him there's no need to be sorry. Eloise suggests vegetable soup for breakfast, and Rakshan happily agrees to go fetch water. He reassures her about staying in the house, saying they can simply move if the owner returns. Eloise meekly asks if it's okay for them to stay without paying rent. Rakshan explains that the owners should be paying her for upkeep as an empty house falls to ruin. She agrees, remembering how her old hut became a home only after she cleaned and organized it every day. Decidedly, Eloise declares she likes Rakshan's house and wants to fix it up first. They agree to go house hunting anyway, stepping out into the nice weather, resolved not to cause any more harm. Rakshan scratches his neck, privately worrying that his own house must have been uncomfortable for her. As they walk, Rakshan asks Eloise if she has any specific requirements for a new house. Eloise lists her priorities, starting with a big kitchen and an oven. Rakshan takes note as she eagerly adds that she also wants a well in the backyard. She smiles, pleased with the thought of her ideal home. They arrive at a quaint cottage surrounded by a small fence. Rakshan explains it's a friend's house, and that it will be easier to negotiate once the landlord is back. He freezes, noticing fresh footprints leading to the house and realizing someone is already inside. He tells Elrose to wait as he kneels to examine the footprints more closely. Rakshan calls out Kian's name in disbelief, just as Kian cheerfully pops out of the doorway to greet Elrose. Looking annoyed, Rakshan asks Kian what he's doing at the house. Kian grins, explaining he was bored and decided to help repair the other house. Rakshan argues that Kian isn't close with the owner, Sian, but Kian retorts that it doesn't matter. Ignoring Rakshan's foul mood, Kian enthusiastically invites them to take a look inside. Rakshan explains to Elrose that the owner, Sian, is a quiet and organized person as they look around. Her eyes light up as she discovers a large oven in the kitchen. Eloise internally compares the kitchens, thinking Rakshan's is bigger, but wondering if she could use this one alone. Rakshan stops dead in his tracks, his face filled with shock and dismay. They discover a massive hole smashed through the bedroom wall, leaving Rakshan speechless. Kian proudly points to the gaping hole, explaining it's what he was repairing, and that they can't sleep there now. As a chibi, Kian asks Elrose if this house is the right one, and she hesitantly agrees, both looking confused. Elrose quietly wonders what Kian is truly up to, as Rakshan watches him with suspicion. Kian smirks deviously, plotting to use a girl to make Rakshan suffer. He watches Eloise and Lachlan together, seeing it as his perfect chance to meddle. A flashback shows children, including a young Rakshan, eagerly gathering around someone, while a young, red-haired Kian looks on with annoyance. In another memory, a red-haired woman asks young Rakshan to live with her, handing him a bundle for his father, as a resentful Kian watches. On a battlefield, the same red-haired woman aggressively grabs Rakshan, demanding to be his partner as others fight for the same chance. Fleeing, Rakshan shouts that he doesn't want a partner, a memory that plays out over a simmering campfire. By the fire, Kian asks Rakshan if there's anyone he likes, and Rakshan flatly says no. Kian warns that he might die without a partner, but Rakshan firmly states he doesn't need one. Rakshan declares he is tired and will never get a partner, leaving Kian to pity his friend's lonely resignation. Back in the present, Rakshan introduces Elrose to a shocked Kian, explaining she's an acquaintance's daughter with nowhere else to go. As Kian watches Rakshan and Elrose happily share a meal, his manipulative plan begins to form. His eyes gleam with malicious intent as he thinks to himself, "This is going to work." He rushes out of the house, calling out to the other men. Facing his comrades, Harkhan announces he has something they need to do for Rakshan. Filled with determination, Kian vows to himself that he'll make his plan succeed no matter what. The scene shows the desolate, war-torn rooftops of the town, highlighting the severity of the conflict. Rakshan and Elrose are dismayed to find no decent homes, and he curses the punks responsible for the destruction. As they continue their fruitless search, Kian slyly suggests that Elrose should just stay at Rakshan's place. Rakshan defensively brandishes a document, falsely declaring he and Elrose are legally married to get everyone to back off, shocking them both. Grown, realizing she's only staying a year, Elrose is stunned by the sudden fake marriage. Kneel. Her attention is abruptly diverted as she kneels, excitedly identifying a plant as basil, much to Kian's confusion. She marvels at the abundance of basil growing wild along the path. They gaze upon a distant, overgrown farm, which Rakshan identifies as belonging to his friend Anand. He explains that his friend planted various special herbs, and Elrose delightedly spots others still growing among the weeds. They approach a warehouse, and Rakshan guesses there is likely farming equipment stored inside. Swarm, a group of men rushes toward them, enthusiastically calling out Elrose's name. Two of the men excitedly ask about lunch, eagerly chanting for meat. Elrose laughs as two other men join in, declaring they're fine with anything as long as there are large portions. Ta-da! She proudly presents a beautifully made basil pesto pasta. Sink. The men's spirits plummet as she mentions using pasta from the pantry, recalling its rotten state. Sweat. Noticing their sudden gloom, a nervous Elrose asks what's wrong. Slump. The men dejectedly complain that leafy greens won't give them strength, but Elrose quickly promises to grill meat and potatoes as well. Smack whack thwack Rakshan furiously pelts the complaining men with potatoes, yelling at them to just eat what they're given. Block. Elrose jumps between Rakshan and one of the men, pleading for him to stop the assault. The man, now with a potato on his head, angrily retorts that Rakshan started it. Elrose frantically defends Rakshan, begging them not to hurt him because he's a weak man. The men are utterly baffled, remembering Rakshan's terrifying power on the battlefield and calling her claim nonsense. Flap wave. She dismissively waves her hands, insisting Rakshan is the most feeble one there, and asks them to lend her a hand instead. She asks them to help her pick all the basil leaves, leaving the men to wonder in horror what their chief has gotten them into. Elrose carefully instructs them to only pick the larger basil leaves, so the plants can continue to grow. She assigns tasks, telling Ethan, Rakshan, and Darus to gather basil, while Kyan and Kugan follow her. Rakshan asks about other preparations, and Elrose explains they need to slice potatoes and onions and boil the pasta. He smiles, offering their help with the simple tasks and saying the guys can easily handle the vegetables. Rah! Kyan and another man cheer, enthusiastically volunteering to help prepare the food. Elrose laughs, delighted to have everyone's help. Kyan asks if making everything from scratch is difficult, mentioning that merchants sell pre-made ingredients. He explains they never ordered the preserved goods because they didn't know how to use them, but she could. Elrose declines, stating that fresh basil is tastier and cheaper, and that they must save as much money as possible. When Kyan asks who will grow the basil, Elrose and the men all cheerfully volunteer, exclaiming, "I will." Elrose smiles fondly, remembering that she used to have her own small garden. Elrose asks Rakshan if she can borrow the plot of land, and he happily agrees since Anand isn't back yet. Nod. Turning to Kyan, Elrose confirms he's in charge of groceries and requests the list to make some changes. Twinkle. Her eyes sparkle as she adds that she wants to know the price of everything. Dash. As Kyan runs off, a voice calls out for Rakshan. Elrose asks Rakshan if they could sell any excess produce to merchants, and he confirms her idea. She smiles, saying it must be her mother's influence, but she would love to make some money. Dash. Rush. Kyan returns in a flash, proudly announcing he's found the receipts as Elrose marvels at his speed. He hands the papers over to his surprised Elrose, who thanks him. Tremble. Quiver. Kyan boasts about being detail-oriented, but Elrose starts to shake as she looks at the receipts. Done! Clench. She erupts in fury, declaring she's never seen such awful receipts in her life. Livid. She points out the receipt lumps vegetables, dairy, herbs, and seasoning into one outrageous 20 gold coin charge with no itemization. Flip. Rustle. As a nervous Kyan explains, the merchant was reluctant to give him the receipts. A sweating Elrose fumes that the price is outrageous. Rage. She erupts in anger over a 5 gold delivery fee, realizing 3 gold should have been enough, as the men watch her fiery outburst. Scratch. Kyan nervously explains the merchant's excuse is that he has to go around the mountain to reach them. Elrose asks if cargo wagons are expensive there, but Rakshan tells her they aren't at all. Rakshan explains that everyone owns a wagon because the villages are so spread out, though his was likely stolen. He reveals a large one costs over 100 gold, stunning Elrose. Shake. Tremble. She realizes with fury that the greedy merchant is overcharging them, exploiting their ignorance. Clench. Elrose nervously asks to take over grocery ordering, and a delighted Kian agrees it would be a huge help. Haha. He admits he just bought whatever was recommended and had no idea what to do with leftovers, making Elrose realize why things were so chaotic. Kian offers her the money bag with 40 gold, but she's shocked, insisting that 1 gold per person is more than enough. He gently stops her, telling her she doesn't need to contribute any money, which confuses her. Kian explains that they all agreed it's hard for her to cook every meal, and Elrose thoughtfully concedes that it's true. She insists she enjoys cooking, but Rakshan steps forward and gently refuses her offer. He explains that it's only right to pay her since they asked her to cook, noting she won't always feel like it, a precision he learned as a mercenary. Rakshan firmly tells her she must also rest on weekends and when she's sick. He adds that she should just let them know in advance if she's going away for culinary research, PFFT. Thinking the conditions are too good, Elrose is shown a massive list of food requests from the men whom Rakshan calls pigs, as Kian explains how happy they are. Ah ha ha. Eloise laughs heartily, realizing the great responsibility she has just accepted. She decides it's time to prepare lunch, and Rakshan agrees. SHHK. Elrose assigns Kian and Kugan to wash and boil potatoes, and they get to work by the well. Eloise asks Rakshan to lend her a hand, leaving him momentarily confused. Crackle, press. In the kitchen, she asks him to squeeze the boiled basil leaves, and he readily agrees. Ring. Squeeze. With impressive strength, Rakshan wrings all the water from the basil. Press. Crush. While holding the list, Elrose notices that Rakshan's name wasn't on it. Rakshan smiles softly, telling her not to worry about him. He explains he didn't want to add pressure since she's busy with the others, but Elrose resolves to make something he likes too. Rakshan announces he's finished squeezing and asks what's next. Ta-da! A small, hand-cranked food processor is revealed. Sprinkle. Following the recipe, they combine the basil, pine nuts, garlic, and olive oil in a bowl. Eloise cheerfully encourages Rakshan, telling him to turn the crank harder and faster. Rattle. Clatter. Crank. She cheers him on as he works the machine with a look of intense concentration. SHHK. As a final step, Elrose grates fresh cheese into the mixture. Ta-da! She proudly presents the finished jar of vibrant, fresh basil pesto. Swish. Eloise offers Rakshan a spoonful of the fresh pesto to taste. Gasp. He's genuinely surprised by how delicious it is. Holding the jar, Rakshan remarks that it tastes completely different from the pesto he's had at restaurants. Eloise smiles, explaining that restaurant pesto is often old, which changes its flavor. Snatch. Nom. She playfully pulls the jar away as he keeps tasting it, secretly happy that he likes it so much. With a determined smile, Eloise promises to make something that will make the pesto taste even better. Gulp. Rakshan swallows in anticipation, wondering how it could possibly be more delicious than it already is. A bountiful lunch is revealed, featuring potato salad, sliced meat, and fresh croissants. Done! More dishes are shown, including beautiful plates of pasta, topped with shrimp and basil. Kian, Kugan, and another man are stunned, exclaiming that the food smells amazing, like a restaurant in the capital. Eloise smiles brightly, holding a basket of fresh bread and happily telling them it's ready. Clean. The meal is over, and the plates are sparkling clean, with someone declaring it was delicious. Shout. Rakshan orders the men to do the dishes while he thoughtfully pours a cup of tea for Elrose. Rub. Wipe. As they clean, Rakshan suggests they tidy the whole kitchen, and Kian notes the old oven is filled with ash. Kian continues, explaining the ash needs to be scraped from the grimy oven, and the vent needs work too. Eloise chimes in, deciding she'd rather clean the house today than continue looking for her own place. Rakshan lights up at her suggestion, happily promising he'll get the oven ready for use by today. Inspired, the other men eagerly volunteer to clean the chimney, the roof, and the garden. Ra'a! A man with red hair watches them, remarking that they used to be so weak from only eating boiled potatoes. Wipe. He wipes a tear, explaining that before Elrose and Rakshan arrived, the men were lifeless and had just been reminiscing about food they missed. Sparkle. Twinkle. His eyes shine as he looks at Elrose, telling her this newfound energy is all thanks to her amazing food. He suddenly proposes to Elrose, asking her to marry him, leaving her and Rakshan completely shocked. Rakshan angrily accuses the man of not taking marriage seriously, but Elrose playfully considers the offer if he picks the rest of the basil, then dismisses the idea as too challenging for him. The red-haired man is left flustered and speechless, while Rakshan still looks stunned. Rakshan reflects on his own hypocrisy, wondering if he's the one who doesn't take marriage seriously after his hasty declaration. Ahaha, he laughs nervously, questioning if his actions made Elrose think Northerners are flippant about marriage, and she asks him, what's wrong? The red-haired man recovers and snickers, teasingly asking an angry Rakshan if he suddenly feels the urge to go pick basil. Later, Elrose finds Rakshan with wooden planks and asks if he's repairing something. Rakshan gently explains he's making a support for her feet, having noticed the high counters make cooking difficult for her. Flap, wave. Elrose waves off his kind gesture, insisting she doesn't need it since she'll be leaving soon. Turn. Changing the subject, she mentions a nice house they saw, but Rakshan calls out for her to wait. He earnestly advises her to be careful when choosing a house to live in. He explains that moving again would be a hassle and insists she shouldn't worry about staying at his place for a while. Batum. Her heart thumps as she asks him to continue, just as he seems about to suggest she continue to live with him. The red-haired man bursts in, announcing his return and interrupting their tender moment. Both Elrose and Rakshan are frustrated, realizing he can't ask her to keep living with him now. Smash! Crack! Rakshan furiously smashes a wooden plank with his hammer in frustration. Startled by the noise, Elrose asks if he's okay, but he clarifies he was just asking where Kian lives. He explains that, since she's staying there, he wants to know where to find her if something happens. Touched that he'd look for her, Elrose smiles as Rakshan turns to get a new plank. She then adds that she wants to know where all the men live, so she can bring them food. Bam! Bang! Rakshan confidently reassures her that won't be necessary, certain they'll all come looking for her here instead. Grin. He gives her a knowing, charming grin. Sigh. Later, alone in the kitchen, Rakshan sighs as he looks at the finished footstool. Wow. He presents the completed footstool to Elrose, who gasps in amazement. She steps onto it, finding her height at the counter is now perfect. She quietly thinks to herself that if she kept living here, they wouldn't need to build a new one. Beam. She turns to him with a radiant, grateful smile. Rakshan tells her he's leaving and reminds her to lock the door and keep the protective pipe he gave her safe. Raise. Elrose shows him she attached the pipe to her necklace for safekeeping. Clack. As the door shuts, Elrose stands alone in the now quiet house. She glances around nervously, admitting to herself that it's a bit scary being all alone. Glip clop. A smirking merchant approaches Yuzma in his wagon, anticipating another easy, hefty payday. The merchant greets Kian, noticing the new people, Elrose, Rakshan, and the red-haired man standing with him. After a brief greeting with Elrose, the merchant rudely demands his payment up front so he can quickly unload and leave. The red-haired man steps in, informing the merchant that from now on, Elrose will be handling all orders and payments. The merchant eyes Elrose with disdain, skeptically questioning if this woman is truly going to be in charge now. The merchant condescendingly asks if a young lady like Elrose can even tell what's good, gesturing to the potatoes in his wagon. With a steely gaze, Elsie thinks to herself, I knew it, confirming her suspicions. Grab toss. To the merchant's shock, Elrose grabs the sack of potatoes and dumps them all onto the ground. As the merchant scrambles to pick up the spilled produce, Elrose calmly declares they won't be buying the potatoes, as they're not worth paying for. Shout. The merchant furiously demands to know what she means. Raise. Elrose holds up a single spoiled potato, explaining that they're rotten, sprouting and moldy, making them completely inedible and unsafe. Done. The merchant breaks into a cold sweat, stunned that she can actually identify bad produce. Whisper. The red-haired man calls Elrose charismatic, as the merchant internally justifies scamming a customer who never checks his goods. The flustered merchant claims he must have brought the wrong ones and offers them the rotten potatoes for free. Elrose sternly tells him to take back his trash, adding that she's not finished with him yet. Swish! She pulls out a wad of old receipts, stating there are too many issues, which makes the merchant flinch. Elrose examines a receipt, noting he sold them saffron in the past, and the merchant nervously asks what about it. Raise. She reveals a small vial of red threads from the storage room. Eloise shoves the vial at the merchant, challenging him to say that it's real saffron. A flashback explains that real saffron turns water a golden color, while fake saffron with vegetable dye makes it a dark reddish color, a lesson Eloise learned as a child. The memory continues, showing that, since it's easy to spot fake saffron, merchants often mix dyed threads with real ones to deceive buyers. Returning to the present, a bowl of reddish water proves her point. The saffron they bought is not just fake, but of the lowest quality. Sniff. Eloise smells the threads and notes they don't even have a scent. Flinch. The red-haired man looks at Kian, angrily asking why he ever bought it. The red-haired man explains that after the war, he heard saffron tea helped with bad memories and sleep, so he bought it for his worn-out comrades. Glum. He hangs his head in disappointment, saddened to learn it was fake, as Elrose watches him with understanding. Turning her glare back to the merchant, Elrose holds up the vial and asks if he knew the entire bottle was fake. Flinch. The merchant feigns outrage, shouting back and denying that the saffron is fake. Point. He points at Elrose, boasting about his decades of business in the area, but she stands firm, insisting it's a fake. Eloise retorts that as a merchant, he of all people should know the difference. Jab, stab. She berates him for selling a complete sham instead of just mixing in a few threads, questioning if he has a conscience. Shout. Cornered, the merchant yells that he won't take the insult and is leaving immediately. Snatch. He tries to grab the vial back, saying if she thinks it's fake, he'll just take it. Toss. He throws the money bag at Eloise, complaining about the trouble he went through to source it from far away. Turn. The merchant storms off, vowing never to return and telling them to fend for themselves as he spurs his horse. Clip-clop. As his wagon begins to pull away, Eloise furiously yells for him to stop right there. Fuming, Eloise shouts that she is not done talking to him. Grin. Smirk. Rakshan and the red-haired man exchange devious smiles, agreeing they feel like taking on a special assignment. Dash at Elrose's command, Rakshan and the red-haired man instantly sprint after the fleeing merchant. Crash. The merchant screams in terror as they effortlessly catch up to his horse. Done. Defeated, the merchant is seen tied up and kneeling on the floor. Eloise authoritatively asks for the name of the local lord, announcing her intent to report the merchant to the authorities. Plead. Beg. The terrified merchant begs her not to, revealing the territory belongs to Lord Harkhan, whom he dares not upset. Sniffle. Sob. The crying merchant acknowledges his faults and promises to deliver quality goods, chosen by Elrose, free of charge, every week for a year. Growl. The red-haired man clutches his stomach and asks what's for lunch, noting Elrose and Rakshan have been busy. Cheer Eloise announces they'll have tomato salad with fresh basil and steak with mushroom sauce. Looking at a small, rustic house, Rakshan asks if Elrose is sure about her choice, and she enthusiastically agrees. Rakshan points out the very obvious large hole in the bedroom wall. Unfazed, Eloise says she'll use another room, having found a study with a small bedroom that's the perfect size for her. Sweat. A nervous Rakshan quickly offers to let her keep staying at his place, even saying he'll sleep in the living room while the red-haired man cheers him on. Eloise just laughs happily and declares they should move her things today. Rakshan is left speechless by her excitement as the red-haired man silently urges him not to give up. Rakshan explains that after moving, they can meet the local farm animals, meaning they won't have trouble getting fresh eggs and milk. Eloise is thrilled at the prospect of fresh dairy, while the red-haired man despairs at their cluelessness, giving up on them. Rakshan tells Eloise that he and Kian will get her things, suggesting she take a look around in the meantime. Surrounded by flowers, Eloise beams with delight at the thought of her new country life. Dash. Suddenly, something rushes past and a surprised scream echoes through the air. Thump thump. Startled, Eloise clutches her chest, noting that whatever just passed was quite large as she leans against a fence. She glances around nervously, admitting to herself how scary that was. Now alone in the quiet countryside, she surveys the area with a pensive hum. Sitting among a bed of flowers with a basket, she thoughtfully considers her new surroundings. She senses she's being watched from the bushes, recalling Rakshan's assurance that the local animals aren't dangerous. Clench. Taking no chances, Eloise grabs a rock and defensively shouts for whoever is there to show themselves. startling a hidden person. A terrified woman appears from the bushes, pleading with Elrose not to throw the rock. Lowering her arm, Elrose asks who she is, and the woman introduces herself as Lisa, a local farmer who already knows Elrose's name. Lisa explains that Kian had stopped by her farm earlier that morning. She continues, saying Kian asked her to say hello, so she followed Elrose, suspecting it was her. Haha. Relieved, Elrose tosses the rock aside, explaining she was just startled by the feeling of being followed. Elrose then asks why Lisa is here, pointing out that her farm is on the opposite side of the village. With a determined expression, Lisa states that she came to have a word with Kian. She explains that when Kian visited for eggs, he left the chicken coop door open. Now, 3 of her chickens are missing, and she furiously wonders what he's going to do about it. Swish Lisa grabs a surprised Elrose and declares they're going to find him right now. Rustle, shuffle. Hearing sounds from the bushes, Elrose asks her to wait. Smack Lisa storms into a house, shouting Kian's name. Upset, Kian holds a bun to his head, insisting it wasn't him and that he remembers closing the door. As Rakshan sighs in exasperation, Kian frustratedly insists it wasn't him, while Lisa demands to know how he could forget. Bow. Kian relents, apologizing and offering to pay for the chickens, but Lisa tells him that's not the issue. She angrily rejects his money, demanding he go to the Deva cattle market and get her 6 new, healthy hens instead. As an afterthought, she adds that he should also bring her back 2 wolf dog puppies. Kian shouts in protest that she's taking advantage of the situation, but she just glares back at him. Lisa explains that wolf dogs are a loyal but hard-to-tame cross between a northern farm dog and a gray wolf. Elrose muses that if she raised one, she wouldn't feel so scared being alone at night. She continues, saying she has experience raising them, but for most people, the pups just run away during taming. Rakshan asks Elrose if she likes dogs, and she replies that while she likes all animals, she has no experience raising them. Elrose asks Rakshan if he's busy, and he says no, wondering if she needs more help with something. She tells him she wants to go to a place called Anand's warehouse. Rakshan agrees to take her after he puts his things away, and Elrose says she'll be right back. As she walks away, she pauses, struck by a sudden thought. In the quiet of her new room, she falls silent, lost in contemplation. Scratch. She wonders if she forgot to close the door, recalling Rakshan's warning, and deciding to be more careful as she goes to get her bag. As they arrive, Rakshan begins to introduce the warehouse, but Elrose excitedly spots some rosemary, noting it's perfect for seasoning. Thunk. To her surprise, Rakshan simply lifts the entire warehouse door off its hinges. Swish. He gives her a charming smile, promising to fix it later and welcoming her inside. Elrose steps inside and gasps, marveling that it feels more like a greenhouse than a warehouse. She discovers several envelopes labeled with the names of various herbs and wonders what they are. Opening an envelope, she's overjoyed to find it's full of seeds. Rakshan reveals another bag, showing her that there are tubers as well. Curious, Elrose asks Rakshan what Anand's job was. Ponder. Rakshan recalls that Anand was an eccentric man who spent more time in his garden than his home. He explains that Anand used to create strange things, gesturing to a desk with various vials and books. Done. For example, he created a plant that grew tomatoes on top and potatoes on the bottom. Elrose is amazed, questioning if it's possible, while Rakshan admits they had to throw the grafted produce out because it tasted bad. Rakshan adds that Anand also made useful things, like a special wheat that resisted storms and locusts, often being the only farm to survive. Wow! Elrose is amazed as Rakshan explains. This led to false rumors that Anand learned magic from mages, twinkle with sparkling eyes. Elrose realizes Anand was a true pioneer in the field of seed improvement. Haha. Rakshan laughs nervously, noting how much Elrose's opinion of Anand has suddenly improved. Elrose muses on the difficulty of seed research, amazed that someone in the quiet countryside was conducting such advanced experiments. She excitedly spots a collection of farming tools, relieved she won't have to buy them, and noting Kian can sharpen them. Elrose enthusiastically claims a sickle and hoe for herself as Rakshan watches with a knowing smile. In a flashback, a cloaked Elrose at a market learns from a vendor that some tubers are too moldy to be sold. She asks if she can take the unsellable tubers anyway, and the vendor permits her. She examines a tuber, thinking she can plant them if she just cuts off the moldy sections first. Ta-da! After planting the tubers, she wipes her brow, hoping they grow as well as her other plants have. Wither. Ah. To her dismay, the plants die and she stares in shock, wondering what went wrong. The narrative explains her mistake. Old seeds have low germination rates and moldy tubers can infect an entire garden. Sniffle. Back in the present, Elrose recalls how she had to abandon that garden after finally learning the reason from her books. Ugh. Done. Rip. Eloise struggles under the immense weight of an overstuffed bag she's trying to carry. Strain. Groan. She insists she can carry it all herself, vowing to repay Anon when he returns. Rakshan effortlessly lifts the bag for her, asking why she is working so hard, much to her surprise. Rakshan observes that her passion for cooking and farming seems to be much more than a simple hobby. He stands with the bag slung over his shoulder as they share a quiet moment outside. With newfound resolve, Elrose declares that she wants to take care of the village. Rakshan looks at her with a puzzled expression, asking what she means by that. She explains that on their journey, she could easily tell which villages were abandoned, prompting him to ask how. Clip, clop. She reveals that while some villages had run-down houses, the inhabited ones always had well-kept gardens. They ride in a carriage through a golden field, the memory of their journey fresh in her mind. She reflects that, while she could live leisurely, she feels compelled to help improve Elden Village now that she lives there. Swoosh! If the village gardens thrive, she reasons, travelers will know people live there, and perhaps she won't have to leave either. She looks up with a bright, hopeful smile, fully committed to her new goal. Awkward. Feeling embarrassed, she says that was her thought and offers to be more discreet if he disapproves. Rakshan gently touches her face, assuring her that he will always be watching over her. Meanwhile, Kian and the other men are certain there will be food, with Kian adding he's fine with leftovers. Rush! The men stampede into the house, vying to be first as Eloise reminds them to wash their hands. Sizzle! Sprinkle! Elrose explains a southern snack, showing how popcorn is made with butter, corn, and salt. The men look unconvinced by the fried corn, with Kian stating he prefers corn porridge. A taste of the fluffy, buttery corn sends Kian into a state of divine ecstasy. Munch. Chomp. The men instantly devour the popcorn, and Kian desperately yells for them to save some for him. Back in the kitchen, Eloise works over several large, simmering pots. Turn! Rakshan enters and asks what she's making, and she greets him while holding a block of butter. Grin. She gives him a brilliant smile, leaving him momentarily speechless. Stir. Swish. Rakshan helps her stir a large pot as she instructs him to mix quickly so the caramel coats evenly. Crackle pop. As she roasts the mixture, a small character drools, lamenting that the delicious smell makes waiting torture. Ah ha ha, she laughs, announcing the caramel corn is almost done as it pours out in a huge pile. She offers a piece to Rakshan, admitting it's her first attempt and she's unsure of the taste. He tries it, his surprised reaction, telling her everything she needs to know. Flush. Bottom. The sweet moment leaves both of them blushing with pounding hearts. Grumble! Kian interrupts, impatiently asking if it's ready yet, and a startled Elrose hurries to serve it. The men happily munch on the sweet, salty, and savory treat alongside fresh bread. Eloise smiles with satisfaction, glad they've successfully used up all the old corn. Rakshan realizes her plan, and she explains the corn wasn't bad, but wouldn't have tasted good prepared any other way. Flutter! Eloise excitedly holds up a document, asking everyone to look at what she's prepared. The 1-year plan and goals to rebuild Elden Village. The men stare in disbelief at the document's title, The 1-Year Plan and Goals to Rebuild Elden Village. Rakshan cautiously asks if her plan means they will have to bring outsiders into the village. Eloise confirms his assumption, explaining that's precisely why she gathered them all for this meeting. Swish. Rakshan stands beside her, declaring that what their village needs most right now is not money, but people. The villagers seated at the table look at each other, murmuring with uncertainty. A man named Daruz flatly states his opposition to the plan, startling a wide-eyed Kian. Eloise acknowledges the importance of good neighbors, but assures them she will be selective about who they accept. Rise. Daruz stands, stating that while he won't stop her, he refuses to welcome any new people himself. Haha, Eloise laughs nervously, as the other men react with shock to Daruz's unusually talkative outburst. Another villager turns to Rakshan, asking if he agrees with Elrose's plan. Nod. Rakshan confirms his support, which convinces the other man to agree as well. Kanyan speaks up, agreeing that Elrose is right, though he admits to being worried about strangers too. Much. He argues that if they'd been too wary of strangers, they'd never have gotten to eat her delicious food. Pleased, Eloise smiles warmly at his roundabout way of supporting her. She adds that if Darus skips lunch tomorrow, she'll simply deliver it to him personally. Rakshan tells a weary-looking Elrose that she should head home for the night. Swish Eloise cheerfully suggests they clean up together. She'll sweep while he washes the pots. Rakshan laughs heartily and happily agrees to her terms. Sweep, scrub. They work side by side, efficiently cleaning the room. Phew. Noticing her fatigue, Rakshan considers telling her to sleep over while he takes the sofa. FWIP. Before he can speak, she thanks him for his help, grabs the leftovers, and heads for the door, prompting him to call after her. Against the backdrop of the night sky, Rakshan insists that he will walk her home.